Welcome to the Crusade Cast, everyone. This is your favorite host. I'm also joined by my partners in crime. LJ's here for more moral support. That's how we roll. Me and Craven, we like to do things with an audience. So, LJ's there to kind of cheer us on a little bit, and he'll be jumping in from time to time. But this is mainly going to be a podcast that me and Craven are going to be taking over. And what we want to do is actually go over a little more about the basics of America. So we want to go over the three branches of government. We want to go over how many senators, mayors, governors, House of Representatives. We want to go over the taxation. We want to go over the court system, kind of how it works, the levels of courts. Then we want to go over we actually want to bring in the Constitution, and mainly we want to go over the amendments. Now, I put here, we're also going to let you know what the Bill of Rights are. That is part of the Constitution. I will be going over that with you. Me and Craven are actually going to be splitting sections up. So there are going to be times where you're going to see me talking, and then Craven is going to just jump in there. And then there are times where I'm going to just jump in. So try to follow us. We're trying to make this as simple and basic so that everybody who sees this can easily follow. So let's get to it. So the first thing, obviously, is the branches of government. There's the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. So the legislative branch, also known as Congress, that actually has the House of Representatives, the Senate, and I'm going to read these three little sections here, so that way you guys can see it. Not everybody likes to read. I don't mind. I have a very nice voice, so Craven can attest to this. So let's begin. Shut up. So the legislative branch, also known as Congress, is responsible for making laws and representing the people. It is so that word is a little interesting. Bicameral? Or bicameral? I'm not 100% sure. We'll skip that. Consisting of the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives has 435 members. Hey, that actually goes over one of the things I was going to post, so we don't even need to worry about it. But with representation based on state population. So it just depends on each state has a different amount of House of Representatives because it goes based off of the population, which is why in some of these states they're trying to flood people in because the more population they have, the more representatives they have. So, anyways, let's just keep going. So, obviously, with representation based on state population, while the Senate has 100 members with 2 senators per state. Hey, that's another thing we're going to cross over. I'm loving this. This thing is just covering everything. So, anyways, Congress has the power to pass laws, approve budgets, declare war, regulate commerce, and oversee taxation. It can also override a presidential veto with a 2/3 vote in both chambers, serving as a key check on the executive branch. So this is actually very interesting. It actually covers a couple of the tabs that I have open because I was really gonna just go over basic stuff, which is nice that this actually covers it, and I think Craven would agree because this is actually saving us some time. So this essentially just states the legislative branch is there to keep the executive branch in check. Now, granted, there's a couple other things they do with the House of Representatives also playing a big role in our voting system. So that's obviously very important. But the House of Representatives has a major role, and it's very important that people understand it. Now, and I will read when we get to the tab of House of Representatives because I want to make sure that we're getting a clear picture of that. And let's move on to the next one, the executive branch. Obviously, I'd like to think most people understand what it is, but just in case, because I want everybody to get a clear picture, the executive branch is headed by the president and vice president, who are elected through, obviously, the Electoral College. This branch is responsible for enforcing and carrying out laws. So Congress is there to create and pass laws, which is another clear or simplified version. And then the executive branch, at least from what they're talking about now, is there to enforce and carry out laws. Managing federal agencies and conducting foreign policy. The president can veto legislation, nominate federal judges and agency heads, and serve as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The Senate confirms or rejects presidential nominations, providing a check on executive power. So just like I was stating, they're kind of designed. The legislative branch is there to, kind of keep tabs on the president. The president also has certain authorities that he can do. And then we get down to the judicial branch. The judicial branch, led by the Supreme Court and other federal courts, interprets laws and determines whether they comply with the Constitution. Judges are nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. The courts have the power of judicial review, allowing them to overturn laws or executive actions that violate the Constitution, ensuring that both the legislative and executive branches operate within legal limits. So I would say, and I don't know, Craven, which one do you think? What branch do you think is more important? Because I actually think the judicial branch is probably the most important one here, but I wanted to get your take on it.
Most important branch. It's actually kind of a hard question because each, when taken into the wrong hands, can get pretty hairy. Because legislative, you're talking about all your laws, right? So if you're thinking about like which branch you don't want to get into the wrong hands, that's a pretty bad one to kind of give away. Obviously, the whole checks and balances thing. I mean, right now we're kind of corrupt, so that doesn't really matter. But in regards to the checks and balances, well, as executive, I mean that's practically almost to some extent power of war, right? So I mean,
Well,
judicial.
the reason why I wanted to interrupt you just a minute, because, and this is where I kind of get confused, because the legislative branch and the executive branch, right? So people are like, the president has the power to, wage war, but it says here that the legislative branch is the one that has the power to declare war. So this is where it kind of gets a little confusing, because does the president have the ability to start a war or declare it?
Well, it's supposed to pass through Congress, right? Theoretically, and then the president is your commander in chief, so he kind of controls what's going down. That's what I kind of mean.
Okay.
He has control of, like, for instance, if they declare war, and the president, let's say they're all on the same page, from that point forward, Congress has no decision making as the war is going on. That's the issue, right? In theory, right? Obviously, people are breaking this left and right. I mean, look what just happened, right?
Yeah.
So, in theory, if you're going to give like the executive branch, like say that's the one you don't want to in somebody else's hands, the issue with that is obviously like during wartime conditions, what he's going to do with the army. That's a huge power just to give to the wrong hands. Legislative, do you really want the wrong person making all your freaking laws? Because then you can't enforce anything. I think the judicial almost to some extent has not. It's important, but it's almost, I don't want to say the least important, but maybe the least affecting by bad judges. But even then, if it's really bad judges, then it nixes the legislative branch to some extent. If it's going, so I don't know. I mean, if I'm to pick the most important one,
yeah,
I would say legislative.
Legislative, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, what makes our system unique? I don't know how many other countries, operate. So when I say unique, it's just my understanding of what makes America unique is all of these checks and balances. Like, if you look at the legislative, the executive, and then, and the judicial, all of these things are checks and balances where every single branch is supposed to kind of keep eye on the others. And the reason why I think the judicial is, probably the most important, if you were to remove, because we can't ever get rid of the human aspect. I hate to say it. Humans can become corrupt as much as humans can do good. They can also do very bad. There's a reason why everything that's invented that can do harm eventually does, so it's sad, but at the same point, it's like the judicial branch, in my opinion, the reason why it's the most important is because it's actually, if they're using it right, it is there to pass laws or deny them, and it is there to enforce the Constitution.
It's a difficult question.
It is, because it's hard, because the president, and I pulled up something here, so I don't know if you're watching the screen, the sharing screen, but what I pulled up here, because there's something I did leave out, and it didn't even dawn on me, because we're talking about how they're supposed to be keeping, every single one is supposed to kind of keep each other in check. And the one thing that I forgot to put up was an executive order, because I see presidents just like kind of bypassing what they should be doing. And, ever since Trump's first term, and I will give this is a Trump thing that started, at least with how many executive orders I saw signed. And maybe I'm a little ignorant because, I'm still a little younger. I don't remember all the presidents that came back in the 1990s and all that. But, President Trump, at least within my lifetime for the last several, he was the one that started doing this. Let's sign executive orders left and right. And now it seems like that's all they're doing. When, to my understanding, he's supposed to be bringing this to the House of Representatives, Congress. They're supposed to be voting on it. And then when it votes, I'm assuming then it goes to the judicial branch for them to review the law, make sure it's constitutional, and then move forward. At least that's my understanding of how this is supposed to work. So, executive orders, I wanted to pull this up because that's what we see them doing now. I mean, Joe Biden did a bunch of executive orders when he came in after Trump started it. And then Trump wound up doing a bunch back. So, if you don't mind, to just give me a second here so I can go over this and read it real quick. So, the definition and purpose of an executive order. So, an executive order is a written directive signed by the president that instructs federal agencies on how to implement laws or manage government operations, ensuring that the laws are faithfully executed. It allows the president to set policy priorities, respond to emergencies, or direct administrative actions without requiring new legislation from Congress. Executive orders can range from routine administrative matters like granting federal employees a holiday to major policy initiatives such as regulating artificial intelligence or directing federal enforcement priorities. So the last thing I'm going to read here is legal authority, and then we can kind of touch on this. So the authority for executive orders comes primarily from Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, which grants the president broad executive and enforcement powers, and from delegated powers granted by Congress through statutes. While executive orders have the force of law within the executive branch, they cannot override federal statutes or the Constitution. Congress retains control over taxation, spending, and war powers, and courts can review executive orders to ensure they are constitutional and within the president's statutory authority. So, executive orders, from what it sounds here, it's not that he's, and this is what confuses me sometimes, and maybe I need to do a little more due diligence on it, because like he canceled, like when we were I think it was Joe Biden, right? So Joe Biden signed an executive order, and if I remember correctly, I don't want to get this wrong. Let me search this real quick just to make sure. Who canceled the Canada pipeline deal?
It was Biden.
It was, right. I'm not going crazy. Okay, because
Trump opened it up. There was the issue because it was leaking into Native American lands. They resolved that to some extent. Biden got in office, shut it down, opened some other pipeline that him and his son had deals with Russia, and then now they got into war with Russia, and then that got cut, and then Trump never did fucking nothing. So it's on the second portion anyway.
So I was using that as an example because it's like, so these executive orders, it sounds like they can't make new laws, but it sounds like any laws that are existing in the book, and he can kind of flirt with the line of, enforcing new things, but he can't really just add a law and be like, okay, this is it. It's kind of what it seems like. And then the executive orders, as long as it's not going against the federal statutes or constitution, then what he says goes once he signs it. That's kind of what I'm getting from it. Is there anything that you took away from it?
No, that's kind of the gist of it, depending on how deep you want to get into it. I mean, I hate saying this, but like, when we start sitting here and trying to look at the powers and how they're used now, it's so corrupt. And if you start really looking at it, you're going to see through all the cracks and how people have been abusing it and how the corruption is blatant. When we start sitting here and just kind of looking at like how the powers are supposed to work and how they're at bay, essentially, I would say right now. But I think that was what you did was say the good overview. I don't think there's a need to get too further in unless you really want to go into the executive branch and everything thereof.
Well, I think we'll do it one day. I want to try to keep it basic. I want people to have that basic understanding. So, and guys, Craven and me can get into some deep conversations, especially when it comes to how well the government does, because we both really love the government.
Israel is our greatest ally.
Where's my $7,000? But anyways, well, we'll keep it moving. So they briefly stated there's two senators to serve in the Senate, resulting in a total of 100 senators, and this is 2 senators per state. I probably should have started with that because they stated it earlier. Now I want to just see here, like, because there's a little bit more information under this that I pulled. So senators serve 6-year terms, and elections are staggered. So that approximately one third of the Senate is made up for election every 2 years, ensuring continuity in the chamber. This system guarantees equal representation for each state in the Senate, unlike the House of Representatives, where representation is based on population. And then I'm going to just do this little thing here, and then we'll continue it unless Craven has something to state. The Senate plays a critical role in U.S. governance, including ratifying treaties, confirming presidential appointments, and adjudicating impeachment trials, which each states 2 senators participating equally in these responsibilities. While the number of senators per state is fixed, the population represented by each senator varies widely, from less than 1 million in smaller states to tens of millions in larger states. So, I mean, and this one I'd kind of like to. So when it says ratifying treaties, I'm assuming these are all on state levels. Because what treaties are individual state senators going to be ratifying unless all of the senators come together, and that's how they come together to actually deal with international matters, which I can't imagine because these are states. Is there anything you'd like to share on that?
I mean, it's pretty. So depending on how far you go back in history,
Mm-hmm.
in regards to the United States and which states over time the federal government has kind of taken more and more. So obviously the treaties, talking about treaties, you're really just talking about the United States as a whole as opposed to state treaties. States used to have treaties back in the day. That was more of a thing when you had your 13 colonies, blah blah blah. Obviously
Mm-hmm.
there was treaties amongst states that regulated economy, regulated trades, shit like that. But I mean, at those times, even slavery, right? So, I mean, depending on what you're talking,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of we're one big country now. It's not necessarily states having their own issues. We're not city states either, so
Okay.
it matters, but to some extent, it's kind of it's a conglomerate now.
Okay. So then they are talking about bigger picture. This isn't just state. So when they do state that, that's what that means. Okay, cool. But at least we know, and here's the weird thing. So senators serve 6-year terms, but I guess it states every 2 years they have an election, which is kind of weird. Senators up for election, but it's probably because they say that they're staggered. So I can follow that. Okay. So anyways, we went over senators. Let's keep it moving. We got here. How many mayors per state? I'm not sure if they answered that earlier. I'll go over this briefly. In the United States, the number of mayors per state varies significantly. Each state typically has its own mayor for its capital city, but some states have multiple mayors for different cities or towns. For example, Massachusetts has multiple mayors for its cities, while states like Florida do not have a single mayor for Florida do not have a single mayor for the entire state. So so I guess they do go into a detailed list. So that's actually pretty interesting. I'm assuming because they're not stating how that's even really like how you appoint other mayors for other states. I don't see anything here, but it's just kind of giving you a brief, description. But that doesn't really give me anything concrete. So I'm going to assume not a big deal. But let's look into like what is the functions of a mayor, because that's something that even I've wanted to know. So let's look this up. A mayor serves as the chief executive of a city, overseeing administration, policy making, public safety, and representing the community both locally and externally. Leadership: a mayor acts as the head of the municipal government, functioning similarly to a CEO. They supervise city departments and staff to ensure efficient delivery of public services, including police, fire, emergency medical, and utility services. In a strong mayor system, the mayor has direct authority to appoint or remove department heads and manage daily operations, while in a council manager system, the mayor's executive role is more limited, with a city mayor handling administrative duties. So, okay. So, I mean, that's actually pretty fairly basic to follow, and it depends on how it's set up. But so mayors are kind of like the head honcho of cities, and that's why they say typically the state's capital has one. So that makes sense. That's actually very, very, very simple to follow. Let's move to the next one. Governors. Okay. So let's see what this is. In the United States, there are 50 states, each led by a governor. Additionally, there are 5 U.S. territories, but they do not have governors like the states. Okay, interesting. Well, let's see here, because I thought that they were going to go a little more in depth, you know, but they're really not, which is very surprising. So I guess this is the better question. What do governors do? So governors serve as the chief executive of a state. So I'm assuming this is probably, like a mayor, but this is for the entire state is what I'm thinking. Overseeing governmental operations, implementing laws, managing agencies, commanding the National Guard, and influencing legislation. So yeah, I mean, I can kind of see that it's their executive leadership. So governors act as the chief executive officer of their state, managing the day-to-day operations of the state government. They oversee state agencies and departments, appoint key officials, and ensure that state laws are implemented effectively. Governors also prepare and administer the state budget, directing funds to align with policy priorities and fiscal responsibilities. So, okay, in short, they're the president of their state. That's kind of how I view it. That's kind of how I view it. They're the president of their own state. They answer obviously to the executive branch, but that's kind of what I'm seeing it as. Is there anything that you think maybe I can elaborate on?
No, not at the moment, at least. If you were just looking for a broad overview.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I mean, I'm on fire. I'm doing amazing with these basic summarizations, people, and I'm not getting paid for this. So, you should take it to the bank when I tell you. It's almost like gold. And Craven can tell you a
Why
lot of,
you always lying?
yeah,
Why you
Mhm.
always lying?
hey,
Stop
hey,
lying.
how dare you jump in to say that what I say is not gold? Craven, tell him. Go ahead, tell him. Tell the fans.
What Ben says is Garbaggio.
That's it. We're moving on. We're moving on. All right. So the House of Representatives. Obviously, we did read that there's 435 voting members representing congressional districts across the 50 states, plus non-voting delegates from U.S. territories and the District of Columbia. So I'm kind of curious to know if they actually go into what this does. So I'm going to read this real quick. Let's see if they actually state, because I know they vote. But if it can go into a little bit more of an elaboration, let's do this. So the House has 435 voting representatives, a number fixed by law since 1913 under the Appointment Act, or no, the the Apportionment Act of 1911 and the Reapportionment Act. Okay, so apparently that word is messing with me, but okay, Reapportionment Act of 1929. Each state is allocated a number of representatives proportional to its population, as determined by the decennial U.S. Census. With every state guaranteed at least one representative, members are elected from single member congressional districts for 2-year terms, and all seats are up for election every 2 years. California currently has the largest delegation with 52 representatives, while 6 states, Alaska, Delaware, North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, and Wyoming, have only one representative each. So, okay, so their basic job is to vote. And kind of like what we read, their job is pretty much, if the president were to try to pass something new, or if they were to try to create a new law, I'm assuming the House of Representatives is where they vote. If they get the majority vote, then it goes to the judicial branch. It's kind of what it sounds like. Does that sound about accurate?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on this portion, but yeah, that sounds from what I'm hearing.
That's kind of what I figured, because when you read the breakdown of the 3 branches of government, that's kind of what it sounds like. So the House of Representatives is under the legislative, and they vote whether or not Congress is approving these laws to go to the judicial branch and get it solidified. So this is kind of just an overview breakdown. This actually makes sense, and it's actually opening my eyes, because there's some things that I didn't even know about the branches, which is kind of nice to actually go through it. So, Craven, I'm going to leave the floor to you. Next on our list is taxation, and we know how much you love being taxed and you love giving your money to the government.
Oh, so where do we start with taxation? So, obviously, everybody's kind of aware by now the amount. Was it 2.5% that we started a war over, or 1.5% in regards to tea taxes and stuff like that. So, taxes, the biggest light I tell you, is that this is necessary for a free society. Hilarious, isn't it? The extortion is the price you pay to live in a free society. It's almost ironic to some extent. And here's the problem, especially in America, and pretty much everybody everywhere in the world, is that there's no short of revolution or armed revolt, there's no way of actually holding the government accountable for the use of the use of your taxes, right? There's we could sit here and, we're going to impose a budget. Well, what happens if they go over the budget? I mean, look what's happening now. There's been no system of government up to this point that has found a way to essentially mitigate, stop the misuse of funds. That is the problem with taxes, right? I mean, the whole principle is I have to throw in money so that they take care of other people. So the problem is, one of the big problems I have with tax, and I'm going a little bit on tangent lines here because it's such a broad topic. Unless we want to get into the history of taxation, I don't know how much time
have fun. We got some time.
No, but we got them amendments to hit, which that's what I want to hit.
True.
But in regards to this lovely topic, we could talk income tax, we could talk individual tax and stuff along those lines. But at the end of the day, the whole principle based, the whole logic behind taxes is retarded. You have your money, right? Your money is supposed to take care of the needs you have, right? So no one knows your needs better than you, correct? So why are you giving someone money to take care of your needs, and they're assuming what your needs are? Well, it's for the greater good. I was like, that's what churches are for. That's what charities are for, right? Those people are taking care of those people. No one should be depending on the government. If you made bad decisions, go to church, be a part of your community. Your community will help you. That's how it used to be. That's where you got your help from. But we stripped that, amongst other things, and made people depend on the government, just like they did in the 60s with the certain communities, just like they did prior to that with the Italians and the Irish. This is if you're always dependent on the government, they have you. they will manipulate the vote. It is what it is, right? Taxes is a means of controlling the populace. Because in reality, no one's going to be able to spend your money the best way for you and your family better than you, unless you're like a drug addict. And even then, I mean, you earn the money. If you want to OD on your own funds, that's your prerogative, right? Like, there's no everybody. Well, what taxes are used for good? I was like, they're used for far worse. This is the whole Hitler argument, right? The whole Hitler and the kid with cancer argument. No, that kid could if you like, you're going to sit here and go that criminal. We have to release him and rehabilitate him because he could end up curing cancer. It's like, yeah, but he's statistically more likely to murder somebody, right? So why are we going through all this forced altruism? That's what taxes are making you do, right? Here, I'm getting forced. You take my money to supposedly go do good, but they don't do good. This is just another hammer, another tool used by people in power to manipulate everybody else. That's all it is. The fact of the matter is the big ass United States government with its big ass military, they've already proven that you can run the essential needs, so to speak, and I quote that essential, with like 3-4% at best, and we're paying out the ass for everything. We're in like the 40% range. So,
well, I mean, I can even go as far as to say, if you were to look at, the amount of money coming into government, the biggest spending that we're doing is on Social Security and military. You get rid of Social Security, you know how much of the budget you free up. Now, granted, I'm not even a fan of taxes, but I'm just saying, that's.
But that's the other thing too, right? Because if you're talking about, okay, if I have to pick where my taxes go, a lot of people would pick the military, and everybody goes, well, the military spends so much money. In the height of the Iraq War, when we were over there and everybody beat on the fucking ground, one of the most expensive wars there was, the budget was only 12% military. Social Security, Medicare programs are like 65-70% of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The Social Security thing is a scam, but that's a whole nother option. Income tax it's Social Security just ended up being another tax that me and you are never going to touch. Right now, it's slated at 67 before we can touch it.
No, man, I don't think for our age it's at 67. I think for us it's in the 70s. I'll double check just to make sure, because I don't want to give false information. But last I checked, it's like my father's age, where it's like 65 or 67.
Yeah, you're most likely going to be dead by then.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not reproducing enough to be. Well, granted, it's a scheme to begin with. I don't think the government should be taking care of the elderly. I think, and maybe we shouldn't be getting into this, because I know this isn't really the topic. So maybe I should keep that to myself, but I don't think it's the government's job to be taking care of people who have had, and this might sound a little harsh, you've had probably 40, 50, 60 years to set things up, hopefully put a little bit of money aside. Hopefully, if you could have maybe a kid or two that are willing to take care of you after a certain point, and hopefully you have some funds that are put aside too, so that you're not, dependent on everybody else. But apparently we're supposed to get money back from the government when we're at death's door. And we're not repopulating, we're not replacing our numbers. So how is the system really going to hold? I don't know if you agree with me. Maybe that's harsh. Maybe I believe something that is very off-putting, but I think families should be taking care of families. That's just how I see it.
I agree, but this is also part of the government's attempt to break up the nuclear family.
Oh yeah,
dependent on the government. That's all this is. It's one big scheme. Not to get all conspiratorial, but it's like, even think of back in the day. Not even all that long ago, in the early 1900s, when there was a one parent working in the household. The mother or father, depending on who was working, but it usually was the mother at that time, was in that kid's ear, teaching him right from wrong, teaching them values, teaching them traditional values. They went to school, and then most of their time was spent under the tutelage of a parent. Now, most of the time is spent under the tutelage of someone who's government appointed in a position. Why is that?
Yeah. No, I mean,
Did
I don't
did,
agree
did
with it.
do parents approve of the curriculum?
A
No.
lot of them don't. No.
Do you even have a
Mm-mm.
say? No, you don't.
Well, they like to make you
You
think you
could,
do, but you
hmm,
don't.
but so I mean, tax. If we're going to go back to taxes, taxes have been around since what, Mesopotamia? Realistically, I think there's early records like back in ancient Egypt of taxation. This is not a new concept. It's just like I said, it's never a good thing for the populace. Just never
No,
has been.
I mean that's fair. Let's go over what some of the essential services it is, and then you can kind of give us your take. Is it a scam? Is it not? Obviously, I know how much you love taxes, and I know you'd like to give half of your checks away. And I'll never stop you if you ever wanted to send some this way. But taxation is king here. Okay. So, but anyways, let's look at what it states, right? So it says here essential services such as healthcare. So, I mean, does anybody here think our healthcare system is fantastic?
Do you even get health care?
No, I mean that's
No,
why
you pay.
I'm
This
assuming
is
they're talking
hilarious.
about like Medicare. I'm assuming they're talking about
You get to pay for
elderly.
the person who didn't take the right path in life, who had 16 kids, or is just living off nothing, just doesn't want to do shit. Like this is the problem: is that the system is so abused. The people who actually need Medicare, the people who are born with issues and they literally cannot work and they don't have family and they don't have anything, those people can't get it, or they get so limited because everybody else is on the fucking thing.
Dang it, Craven. We're supposed to be about helping the American person. All right? These
Give them their
taxes
money
should
back.
be going to everybody, including me. But you know what? It's a fair
Here's an
point. Let's
here's an
keep.
idea: no taxes for 4 years. Stop funding foreign wars. Stop funding stupidity. Stop funding the CIA. Stop money laundering. If you can't run a budget in Washington, you don't have a job, and/or you guys get to split the debt in which you caused from your own pocket.
Okay. All right. Look, it's an interesting take. In all honesty,
It'll never happen. So you have to pull them out of their houses and show them the Second Amendment. But hey,
in all honesty, this is another one where I think the government should be out of too. I think we should start forcing the doctors to be competitive, like we do in a lot of other areas, so that they lower their prices. I think it's ridiculous what we're doing in the healthcare industry today. Now, I would like to do a podcast where we can really get into that and go into the weeds to let people know how healthcare really works. Now, insurance, I think, is the biggest scam, in my opinion, but, we can get into that at another time. Education. I mean, don't you think taxes should be going to education? What about the teachers? What about the children? Don't you have a heart, Craven? I mean, clearly education, you agree. Our money should
you
be
pay for
taken for
schools
that.
though. But that's the thing. You still pay for schools. It's your taxes. Your taxes go up when you have kids in school. It wasn't funded by your taxes in the first place. You're paying for it anyway. You're paying for it shittily because then they force you to go to a school that you didn't pick, but because it's based on your location, you have to go there and picked by teachers that you also didn't have a say in what standards were when they got their degree. And then they teach your kids about shit you never fucking had a hand in either. It's just like the DMV. If you want something to run more expensive and less efficient, you let the government run it.
All right.
That's why
Well,
government half the time outsources to private. So when they just give up, like when I used to work at UPS, we used to get the USPS's mail through UPS because it was literally cheaper after they paid USPS just to outsource it to UPS.
we all know our government agencies are some of the most efficient agencies. Like you say the DMV, but the DMV is amazing. All right. You want to go to a
DMV
place that
is
makes you
the
wait,
biggest,
that's where you go.
the biggest, the whole motor vehicle road system in this country is one of the biggest scams ever run, and it keeps running. Your brothers, your sisters, your grandfathers, your great grandfathers all paid into it with their taxes to make a road that you still pay for, and then you go every year and you register your car to use the road. every year. You have to pay insurance to use the road, depending on what state you're on. And then, depending on also what state you're on, you might actually have to go through an emissions test for your car to use the road that you already paid on 3 times. And then you need a license that needs to be renewed to use the road that you paid on, paid on, and paid on. And then you pay tolls to pay the pay on top of the pay. And then here's the kicker: you also fund people who sit on that road to ticket you on the road that you paid for and paid for and paid for and paid for. And the hilarious part of all this, they want you to adopt the road one more time at the end that you paid for, your daddy's paid for, everybody's paid for years.
Fucking
Talk about a
retarded.
fucking racket.
Fucking
What
retarded.
about
Of course, LJ jumps in. Oh man, I was waiting for it. I'm like, LJ's got to have something to say. I mean,
Fucking retarded. You can't make that shit up.
well, okay. You know what, Craven? I'm sensing a theme here. I think you're just an angry man when it comes to taxation. You know, I just get the sense that you're not being reasonable. All right, but the next one here, you have to agree with defense. Our taxation clearly needs to go to the defense of the United States of America.
Israel?
Yeah,
sure. We are sure defending Israel right now. Let me tell you.
I'm so glad they need a military too. Okay.
They should fucking invest in it. There's enough Jews with money that should be fine.
And the next one here, roads. I think you covered roads pretty elaborate. I mean, that was a very it just goes to show you how efficient our government is, right? So you just go from one entity to the next, to the next, to the next, while all these entities are stealing from the United States citizen. Well, let's use a fancier word, instead of just saying stealing. Forcefully taking, I think, is a very better way to say it. What do you think, Craven? Do you think that's a better way of putting it?
Getting angry right now. I'm just trying to be silent. Just trying to live.
Well, clearly, we're getting nowhere with you, and I got 2 more things here that we need to cover, and I know you're going to agree with one of them. Welfare. Yeah. Don't you think that a lot of these lazy people deserve to get money? I mean, I signed up to give my money to lazy people.
Are we still talking about Israel?
Yeah. Dang it, Craven, not everything has to do with Israel. We have plenty of people here, right?
Plenty of lazy people here.
Let me give you an example of why I say this, and all kidding this aside, welfare is a system that I really hate. Not because I don't believe that there are people that really try, fall on hard times, and need a little bit of help. I'm all for that. The welfare abuse in this country, and I'm going to give you an example of what I mean. I went to go get my CDLA, right? I'm not sure if I ever told LJ this. I think I did. But Craven, I'm sure you are very well aware that I used to drive semis. And I had gotten my license to drive semis. And when I was there trying to get my CDLA, there was a guy that was on welfare. And I will never forget this because it is hard for me not to judge this guy. I'll be honest with you, it is hard because at that time, I was like this lazy SOB piece of you know what, because he's over here because they were asking, hey, when are you going to jump into the workforce? And you know what this guy had the gall to say? He's like, after I get my CDLA, I'm going to wait till my welfare is up. And then I'm going to go get a job. And I could not, I wanted to choke him. I'm like, you lazy trash. But a lot of people out there abuse welfare so much. And honestly, this is why I agree with a lot of what you state, because because you know me, I really don't agree with taxation. If you're going to tax, and I will be clear, I am open to reasonable taxations. And even then, I'm very scarce with the word reasonable because our government takes so much money from our taxes and throws it overseas, and they're sending it to Middle East to fund transgender schools and studies. Does that sound like something that you and I And a lot of Americans would really sit here and state, we have homeless vets. We have homelessness on the streets. There's a lot of things going on here. But you know what? F the vets. Let's go ahead and just send it to those trans studies because the Middle East needs to be more accepting of these people. Does that really sound like what the U.S. people would do if you were to sit here and say, realistically, let's keep that money in-house? I don't agree with taxes, period, but tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm viewing this in a crazy way. Maybe we like throwing our money at useless stuff.
You're missing the point here. Why are they doing it like that?
They're corrupt. They're money laundering. I know. I know this, right? But on the official paperwork, which I thought was hysterical. If anybody really believes that our money is going to trans studies, you're an absolute idiot. You should slap yourself in the face and go stare into the corner because obviously this is money laundering. It's like the governor. What was it from? Was it Minnesota? Where he's like, I had no idea the Somalis were, committing fraud. Well, Jay, if you got off your fat ass and you actually went over there and saw the learning center was spelled Leering Center, you might have noticed something. You know what I mean? That man is as incompetent as a 5-year-old liberal. Okay. And I say 5-year-old because they don't, they're silly just like liberals. Far leftists, I should say. But let's not attack the other side for being special. I mean, for being different. For being different. That's what we're going to go with. But, clearly we don't agree with any of these. And the last thing is disaster relief. That's actually probably one that I wouldn't mind if they actually used it properly. Now, there were cases where they did make it easy to get some relief money when we had hurricanes. I am all for disaster relief. But, Craven, I've been wrong on thinking that you were going to agree on healthcare, education, defense, roads, welfare. I'm seeing a trend here. I don't think you're going to agree with disaster relief.
Nope, not at all either.
Yeah, and would you like to elaborate, sir?
I'm tired of my money going to things that I cannot fund. If I wanted to fund things, if someone, God forbid, they go through a disaster and I want to give them my money, that should be my decision.
I mean, look, you're not wrong. I agree with disaster relief, but I think it should be done in a better way. I don't think the government really should be doing this because it's like you stated, right? Back in the day, you had churches, you had communities, people actually talked to each other. Ask me if I know any of my neighbors other than one. I still don't, even though we had that conversation not too long ago about immigration and how we have really nothing in common with a lot of people that are around us. I still have not got off of my big behind to go meet my neighbors, which I really should. By next podcast, I really should at least know one more neighbor. But I mean,
it's your big behind up and go do some meet and greet. The hell?
Yeah, but it's just like I work in customer service. The last thing I want to do is get home and be like, let me go knock on all these people's doors and talk some more. But anyways,
That's exactly what you need to do. That's exactly.
No, I'm good. But so there are 4 different categories here of taxes. Now we got Craven's thoughts on whether or not you should be taxed. I actually lean very much with Craven on this. I don't think we should be taxed. I think the argument for taxation itself is a very foolish and stupid argument. But you got a lot of lazy people that are all for taxation because they're always trying to get the government to just give them free stuff. And I never understood the amount of stupidity of people that are out there. And yeah, this might sound a little controversial or a lot, depending on where you lean. But, I have family that actually stated schools should be free, like colleges, right? And then you're like, oh, colleges should be free. How are they going to get paid? Just because you're not paying it doesn't mean they're not getting paid. They have to get paid because those teachers need to make a living. They have homes that they want to go to. The infrastructure for the buildings need to be taken care of. Maintenance needs to be taken care of. The lawns need to be taken care of. The parking lot needs to be taken care of. Who's taking care of the security? Who's running the stores that are on college campuses? Because usually they have bookstores. Who's paying for the programs that are on those computers? And because they usually have like a lab or a library, things like that. Who's paying for all of this? And then if they're like, well, it's not us because it's free. No, you're a moron. It's going to be taken out through your taxes. So what they're saying is I'm going to give you all this free stuff, but then behind the scenes, I'm going to steal from your back pocket and I'm going to increase your taxes in another area. So I'm going to steal from your back pocket, say it's free, and then you're too stupid to realize you're taking home less money because we're making up that through taxes somehow. And guess what, guys? These are 4 other taxes that we have here. Income tax, paid on wages, salaries, and other income. Can you believe that? I mean, our money's already taxed. And can you believe we got to pay another tax? Goods and services tax, a consumption tax. Can you believe they tax your money and then they want to tax you to go buy stuff? Right? I mean, it's a consumption tax applied to most goods and services currently, and they're pulling up Australia. I don't even know why the hell they keep pulling up Australia. The hell with Australia. But anyways, it's currently at 10% in Australia. I don't really care what percentage it is over there, but the fact is we do that here. Whenever you go to the store and you want to buy eggs, you want to buy milk, whenever you go to buy gas, they're already taxing you. And if you are smart enough to actually, and I don't say smart enough, but if you're willing to take a risk and start a company, they want to charge you company tax. So for these people who own companies, they get effed unless they really make it big. Companies, smaller companies, it is a pain to make it because look at this, income tax, you're still getting taxed. If you're an owner of a company and you're taking home a paycheck, you're paying income taxes. If you're an owner of a company and you're buying goods and services, you're still paying taxes. And then on top of that, they want company tax. And there are other taxes too. There's other taxes, always tax. Did you ever think that in certain states when you pass away, there are taxes you got to pay? Isn't it amazing how you're always taxed for everything and they always want more money because there's never enough money, yet you have 300 and something million of us all paying a percentage of tax, and it's never enough. It's never enough. And I got to calm down because I'm getting a little loud, but the hell with the government and the hell with taxes. This is why, we started a war over taxation. Our founding fathers and the people at the beginning, they were very smart in a lot of ways, and they had a lot more balls. They had a lot more. They had a lot more balls. The founding fathers, the ones that were rich, they staked everything they had, and a lot of them died poor. So, and I'd like to get into that at another time. Probably go a little history. Craven, I know you'll probably love that. You probably know the history a lot better than me. But we're going to move to the next subject because I really want to get to the amendments tonight. We want to go over at least 5. For this is part 1 of the series. I think it's going to be either 2 or 3 parts. We're really going to give you guys the rundown on the amendments, basic overviews, and our thoughts on it. So the court system, right? So you have federal courts, state courts. The next court that I will be going over in the next tab is the main court of the land. If you don't know what that is, hey, you know what? Yeah, you've probably been living under a shell, or you don't have access to a TV, or anything with basic laws that you can see. So if you have a phone and you don't know it, that's on you. Now, granted, I'm not treating everybody like a retard because most people probably know what federal courts are and state courts. The Supreme Court really doesn't get brought up as often as these courts, at least not that I see. Most of the time it's federal or state courts or appeals courts. So anyways, these are the 2 basic court systems, federal courts and state. So let's go ahead and look at them real quick. Federal courts. These include district courts, circuit courts, and the U.S. Hey, it actually pulls up the Supreme Court here. I actually put the Supreme Court in its own category because the Supreme Court is the main. It is the main court. It is the court where all of the controversial constitutional cases go. And what the Supreme Court decides is it. There's no appeals court to that. They are the head. So I realistically didn't want them to have that there, and I didn't realize it, but whatever. Let's keep going. Federal judges are appointed for life and handle cases involving federal law. I know the U.S. Supreme Court, they're there for life. Essentially, I don't know if in other courts, federal courts, they are. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. State courts. These courts manage the majority of legal disputes and are often the first point of contact for individuals. They handle a wide range of cases, including family law, criminal cases, and civil disputes. So court processes. The judicial process typically involves several steps, including filing a case, pretrial motions, trial, and appeals. Each court has its own procedures, but the fundamental goal is to ensure justice is served. As long as you don't got corrupt judges, then, the court system was designed to do something incredibly important. And a lot of times you get people that are willing to make political statements or to put their own personal goal ahead. There's a lot of people out there that are corrupt. It sucks to say. But if these systems, if these courts were actually supposed to be ran the way that they are supposed to be, then, this system here is actually a very solid system, in my opinion. The next one I put was the Supreme Court of the United States is the highest court in the federal judiciary of the United States. It has ultimate appellate jurisdiction over all U.S. federal court cases and state court cases that involve questions of U.S. constitutional or federal law. The court is responsible for ensuring equal justice under the law and serves as the guardian and interpreter of the Constitution. Additionally, it plays a crucial role in maintaining the balance of power among the branches of government through its power of judicial review. So that's why I wanted to do it on its own thing, guys, because this court is the court. There is nothing higher than this court. Any decision this court makes, it's final. You can't fight it. You can't take it to another court. This is it. So I don't know. I guess I technically understand that it's under the federal court system, but to me, this should be in a category of its own. That's my opinion. So let's go down to next on our list is what is the Constitution of the United States? Hopefully, every American at least knows what the Constitution is, but because I wanted to do an overall view of this and I wanted to make sure everybody got the basics of it, we're going to go over it real quick. The Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the nation, establishing the framework of government, defining citizens' rights, and guiding the balance of power between federal and state authorities. So the overview and purpose, I'm just going to do this little section here because I'm not going to go over all of this. We just went over briefly that. So the Constitution was drafted in 1787 by 55 delegates at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia to replace the Articles of Confederation, which had created a weak central government. Its primary purpose is to form a more perfect union, establishing justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for current and future generations. I don't know why I saw it unites the states under a single federal government while protecting individual rights and limiting government power. So that is our main law of the land. There is a supremacy clause that actually states that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. There is nothing that can trump the Constitution. So next is, what are the Bill of Rights? Now, I know for a lot of people that understand the Constitution, they probably know this. Like I said, this is basics. So bear with me. We're getting ready to get into the amendments. So the Bill of Rights, this is what it is. Let's read it real quick. The Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. Ratified on December 15th, 1791, it was created to protect individual liberties and limit government power, drawing inspiration from earlier documents like the Virginia Declaration of Rights and the Magna Carta. Key guarantees include freedom of speech, press, and religion, as well as the right to be secure to be secure from unreasonable searches and seizures. The Bill of Rights serves as a foundational document for American civil liberties and legal protections. So, no kidding. All right. Now, it's also, just in case you didn't know this, it's also the first 10 amendments. That is in a little bit of a summarized version. It is the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. This is just kind of giving you a nice little paragraph here. But in other words, first 10. So guys, we're getting ready to get into the amendments now. Craven's going to be taking it off with the first two. But I will say this before we get going. You really should check out the Federalist Papers if you really want to learn more about the Constitution. So the book, the Federalist Papers, it's about a few of the founding fathers, and I actually have it highlighted here. So if you don't mind, Craven, if you don't mind bearing with me for a minute, because I have it highlighted, and I just want to let everybody know. So the Federalist Papers, it was at that time that Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay wrote the newspaper articles that together would become the Federalist Papers. So there were three of them that were making the argument for the Constitution. They were trying to talk to the American people at the time to tell them why the Constitution was the way to go. Now the downside is James Madison. And the first chapter on the first 2 pages, James Madison actually stated that, they didn't have a better system than what we had now. They couldn't come up with another way, but he didn't like the two-party system. He didn't like the two-party system because of exactly what was going on today. The founding fathers saw this being an issue later on down the road, but because they didn't have a way to, I guess, combat that or find a way to get around what is going on today, this is the reason why we're where we're at. And I don't blame them because, think about it. They were at disadvantages in many areas, so they did phenomenal with what they had. With what they had to make a constitution, to try to give people, to try to make a country starting off at freeing a certain section, and then later on, we've been doing nothing but freeing and liberating people, at least within our own country. I think that's a wonderful thing. But, at that time, they saw the issues with the two-party system, and they knew that at some point it was going to be an issue, and that they were going to be at each other's throats, and that, realistically, even though they wanted to prevent this, unfortunately, they didn't have anything better. So I think it's a good read, and then at the back of it, it has all of the articles and amendments and everything for the Constitution. So the amendments obviously are the laws that protect you. So let's go ahead and get into that. Craven, I'm going to leave the floor to you, my friend.
Amendment 1.
Yes, sir.
A little more history on the Bill of Rights, i.e. our first 10 amendments. So I always like to look at, because we're going to start with the First Amendment. First Amendment, as you go, freedom of speech, right to assembly, freedom of religion, and essentially, missing one, peacefully assemble. Okay, so what does that mean? So in order to kind of get a gist, because I'm going to read it straight off, essentially the U.S. history site here. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So what does that mean, right? Freedom of speech. So if you're not familiar with the founding of this country, Puritans, a lot of people were fleeing religious persecution. Back in the day, there was a lot of, pretty much, even to this point, the right to protest or to say negative things about the government in which you were a part of usually came with penalty. So the notion that, we have here in America where we kind of sit on the road and protest the government, nothing happens to you, that's a privilege, especially if you're talking about human history in general, right? Why is it important, right? So founding fathers kind of agreed or came to the conclusion that being able to sit here and say what you mean, sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? If you could put something out there, the idea ceases or expands. It should be based on the precedence of that statement, the character of said statement, right? So having the First Amendment not only allows people to get good ideas out there, allows for it's the start of good inventions. It's the start of pretty much good anything, right? We have to talk about it. We have to see where this goes, right? And this essentially leads to the government in itself, right? Being able to sit and protest what the government's doing, being able to sit and talk about the tough things that have to be talked about, the uncomfortable truths, right? This is it's the start of what you need for a free society, right? Now, why is it the First Amendment? Because the other amendments essentially are either bridge off of this or in some way, shape, or form kind of tie into the same thing. So getting from this to the Second Amendment, right? The First Amendment, without the Second Amendment, the First Amendment is just a suggestion. Because if you have no means in which to enforce what you're saying or to enforce your own beliefs, how are you ever going to keep them? It's the same thing when we start arguing, not to get too far out of the weeds here, but when we start arguing about the whole men and women war of the sexes aspect, when we start, if men sit here and decide tomorrow women don't have rights, what happens? That's essentially what happened. What will happen if the government decides, if without the Second Amendment, that's what essentially will happen if they decide you don't have a First Amendment. There's no way you can enforce it, right? So they do tie into each other as much as people like to not pretend that they do. Now, why else is the First Amendment? When you think of the First Amendment, what do you think of, Ben?
Ooh, I think of well, one of the main things, one, free speech, and then and free speech to me is not regulated at all, and then two, peacefully assemble and for religion, and that's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, right. Religious persecution, right? That's a big one. Like you should be penalized just for who you choose to or what you choose to believe in. But that's really never really been the case in a lot of societies, right? The very few rulers have had that, and to some extent, I mean, you also had, the second class citizen aspect too, right? Like they allowed you to practice your religion, you just weren't granted the same rights, or you had to pay a fee, like with Islamic territory. So it allows people to live here without having essentially a gun to the back of their head, quote unquote, right? Depending on what they want to believe in, go from there. So,
My bad.
I'm sorry. Oh, you good?
I thought I was mute.
But yeah. So that's your gist, and then just getting in kind of just a real quick gloss. Freedom of press, pretty much is confirming that the government cannot have any kind of restriction on mass communication. Right? They can't silence certain things, even though they're kind of already disobeying that one.
Yeah, repeatedly.
They are. So we normally this kind of gets. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but it normally gets brought up with defamation and stuff along those lines. So defamation, freedom of speech, not the same exact thing. You also hear people, quote unquote, well, it doesn't. What if you can't yell fire in a crowded theater? That's not. People say, well, there's restrictions on freedom of speech. It's not. Yelling fire in a crowded theater is not illegal if there's a fire. The issue with yelling fire in a crowded theater is because it's a call to action. And it's still not illegal. It's the issue is that if you say fire and someone gets trampled because you caused a panic or a riot, you're liable for said injuries to some extent, legally. So it's not that it's illegal. It's just you can be held accountable for what happens because you started the stampede.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, there is a lot of muddying of the waters when we start talking about the First Amendment in regards to like what's the legal, what's not. Defamation's not is technically not freedom of speech to some extent because you're outwardly lying, and then essentially you were essentially, if you think about it from just the logic standpoint, freedom of speech allows me to talk openly without being, criticized or held just to an extent where I had no, like, your religion or am I preaching the good word of Jesus, blah blah blah. It allows me to not be in a position where that's prison time or fined or whatever, or killed. Defamation is essentially you deliberate. The issue of proving defamation is you have to prove that you knew that it was a lie. That's not freedom of speech. You're trying to harm somebody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think the correct thing is you'd have to prove. I think they state malice.
Yeah, and you have
I
to
believe
prove
it
that
is.
you intentionally lied, and that's also the problem trying to hold someone accountable for defamation, right? Is
Mhm.
trying to find a way that you can prove that they knew what they were saying was a lie,
Yeah. Well, I mean that's why
right? So,
the cases are very difficult to win.
mm, yeah, and to some extent, it kind of should be that difficult, right? Because it's still speech. No one's now. Usually, what happens is they hold you for defamation when the speech supposedly cost you money or cost you business opportunities, stuff like that. If I say, Ben, I hate your bald head, that's not defamation. If especially considering that one, your head is bald too, that's not. I didn't cost you any money, unless for some reason Maybelline was going to sponsor you before this.
They were.
But
I will be filing a court case.
free exercise of religion, we kind of know that. The
Shut up,
Establishment
LJ.
Clause. A lot of people cite, separation of church and state. That's not necessarily true.
It's not what they meant by it.
Yeah, they kind of muddy those waters as well. Like, yeah, that's a whole nother argument. Jefferson was involved in that as well. But it's kind of your gist of your first. Before I get into the second,
Hmm.
do you guys have anything to add or that you wanted
So
to add or ask?
I think the First Amendment should apply to sane people, and I would like to use its legislative powers to verbally and forcefully shut up the mentally ill. How do you guys feel about that? I know you saw the wink, but at the same point, you're probably like, I would love to, but I don't trust the government.
Exactly.
Do I not know
Essentially,
what
what
you're thinking or not?
I'm just saying.
Oh man.
I'm just saying.
No, I mean that's all fair. Yeah, the way that you broke it down was definitely good. Now, the only thing I'd like to iterate, at least from what I've heard, on the separation of church and state, we don't need to get into it super. I always just like to clarify. And from what I've read, they don't mean that someone who believes in any kind of religion cannot use their morals that are based on that religion to make certain decisions. What they meant is the country itself is not going to put any religion as the official religion of the land. That's, to my understanding from what I've read, that's what they meant. And there's cases to make that argument because they're stating in the founding, a lot of these states, they were, a lot of them were Christian. They actually required and wanted you to be of the faith. So once again, that's what I've read. Craven, you're more than willing to correct it if it's wrong or make any kind of alterations.
Oh, that sounds about right.
I just wanted to mention it because that's actually a big one for a lot of people, is they have this incorrect notion that Christians shouldn't be trying to get into Congress and trying to base their decisions on their morals, which they get from the Bible. Like, go figure. Right? Like, that's the craziest thing ever. It's like, okay, don't follow the Bible that you believe in. Oh, well, that's kind of where you derive your morals. That's kind of where you derive the way you live your life. So you kind of are going to. But anyways, nor here nor there. I just wanted to clarify that so that the people watching can understand that point. Go ahead and take it away with amendment number 2.
Amendment number 2, key right, bear arms. So essentially, well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, everybody quotes, or the gun control advocates always say, well-regulated militia. What does that mean? People think it means well-regulated, like in the government sense. Well-regulated back in those days was essentially referring to the training. Right? Training, disciplined, competent. Militia. And if you look at the third word there, militia, right? What is a militia? What is a militia, Ben?
To my understanding, it is a well-armed group of civilians. That's to my understanding.
Yep, military force that is raised from the civil population to supplement a regular army, in an emergency usually, right? So if you, the argument is that well regulated means government control. That's the gun control argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the next word, it literally means civilians, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why would it say a government civilian group? Doesn't make sense, right? And why would, if you're still on that board, a well regulated, was it just some laws of the civilian group, or is it actually referring to the training? Sound that they should be competent and ready, being necessary to the security of a free state. So even if we disregarded that first part and we looked at being necessary to the security of a free state, why is it saying that?
The government can enslave you. That's what I would. That's what I'd be taking away
Right?
from it.
Because the next, yeah, because then the next one of the next arguments is that they use is that, oh, it's for hunting, and we'll get into that in a minute. But it says right there, being necessary to the security of a free state, i.e., tyrants.
I'm gonna let you
That's-
touch on that hunting argument because when people say that, like if I had hair, I'd be pulling it. I'm just saying.
It's so frustrating. The right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. That one's easy, right? The right of the people,
Yep.
to keep, own, maintain firearms should not be infringed by anyone. Now, these first 10 amendments specifically apply to the federal government, right? That's what these were initially founded. This was actually not for the states,
Mm-hmm.
at least at the time of inception. So, or I don't know if you'd use conception for that, but you get my drift, right? So,
yeah.
where are these rights? These, where does a right? What is a right? Right? What is a right then?
You asking me?
Yeah,
I was gonna say,
right,
well,
in your idea.
I was gonna say because LJ's been so attentive and participating. I figured you were asking him, but you're asking me. All right, if I am understanding this correctly, a right is something that you have the legal authority to do. That's my understanding. Maybe I'm incorrect on that, but that's what my understanding is. It gives the civilian certain protections under the law.
To some extent, right?
Mhm.
Normally, and this is a rough, definition, but it's pretty much a universal right that all people hold, regardless of customs, laws, societies, given to them by God or nature, depending on what you believe in, not the government. So that's the difference, right? This is not something that the government can freely give and take back from you. This is something outside that no one can touch. These are untouchable things, right? And where does that come from? That's a trick question for LJ.
That's what you were saying.
Where's the whole natural law and natural rights come from? Because as much as Americans think that our whole founding documents are all off the top of the slick of the brain, no one influenced any of those. Not the case, right? A lot of these ideas were pre-documents prior to the Bill of Rights, prior to the Constitution, prior to the Declaration of Independence, right? Where is that idea of natural rights, natural law come from? It's a trick question. Well, it's not a trick question.
I was gonna say, I'm like, this might be a trick question. I depending on how you're, I was gonna say this could be complex. I don't know if I'm gonna fall for this, so I'm gonna keep my thoughts to myself on this one.
John Locke, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was the two treaties of government, somewhere in the late 1600s, early 1700s. If I'm sure I'm wrong on the exact date, but it's in that area. Pretty much an English philosopher, the Glorious Revolution, which kind of plays into the Second Amendment in itself, right? Is pretty much the revolution in England overthrows King James II, I think, and then who promised to abide the English Bill of Rights replaced them with King William III, who promised to abide by the English Bill of Rights, which sets some precedent into our Bill of Rights. Right? So Bill of Rights, pretty much certain laws that the government can't overstep at that point in the monarchy, right? So that's one of the big founding documents there, English Bill of Rights. John Locke right? If you want to go even further than that, we could probably use the Magna Carta here as a kind of the gist. That's somewhere in the early 1200s as a kind of the first document in which our documents were kind of pulling from. And then you would also have Montesquieu, which I don't know how many, but what you were touching on earlier, the idea of separation of powers and checks and balances,
Yeah.
and to overthrow tyranny, is Montesquieu, which is, yeah, I think I want to say mid 1700s. French guy, very influential if we want to get into that. But going back to the Second Amendment, that's where some of those ideas come from. So, kind of going through that amendment, what are the typical things that people want to say, right? Well, it didn't apply to machine guns. That's horseshit.
Absolutely retarded.
Not only is it horseshit on the basis of you had Gatling guns at that point in time, you had cannons. An M16 wasn't even. Can I have a 16-pounder gun outside my door then? Is that okay? You had, I forget the name of the gun, but there was a gun that they used on the sides of ships. It was essentially a small Gatling gun. Hundreds of rounds.
I was about to say, like, the minute you said on the sides of ships, I'm like, cannons? Duh.
No. It was like a small, I think a pickle gun, I think it's called, if you want to look that up. But that, the amount of rounds that used to, let me look it up real quick for you. This is the pickle gun. Let's see. Mounted on a tripod. I'm trying to see. Let's see. Patent number 418. I'm just trying to get okay, a puckle gun from 1722, able to fire 63 shots in 7 minutes, approximately 9 rounds a minute.
Give me 1 second, because I'm gonna pull that up so that the audience can see it. What is it called? How to spell that for me, just in case?
Puckle. Puckle gun.
Okay, this is that's a huge freaking weapon. At least from the picture it looks like here, it is a pretty dang hefty gun.
Yeah, and that was what, Puckle gun, 1722, so almost a little over half a century before we even started talking about our fucking Second Amendment, right?
Yeah.
So the notion that this didn't apply to that kind of weaponry is horseshit, right? There's also a story in regards to, so there was a lot of piracy during Jefferson's time. A lot of merchants were having their shit raided on the ocean. Mm-hmm. So he sends a message to Jefferson saying, "Hey, I'm getting raided." I forget the name of the merchant, but it was to Jefferson. He was saying, "Hey, I'm getting raided. I need some kind of protection. Can I put?" I forget the exact pound of cannon, but he was asking pretty much to upgrade his shit into well into the military aspect. Yeah. And Jefferson's response was basically, "Sure, I can't wait to see it." So the notion that you're not supposed to have military grade is horseshit, and the fact that everybody's like, "Well, muskets, you're allowed to have it because it's muskets." Well, muskets were military grade.
Yeah, I mean at the time.
So can I have military grade? So can I have military grade or not? Because that's what you're telling me. No. And if you're going to use that argument where it's like, well, they didn't know that they were going to have machine guns. So the First Amendment only applies to the printing press, not the internet?
I don't agree with that in the slightest. I think the Founding Fathers knew 100% that we were going to get more sophisticated weaponry, that we were going to have firearms that they could only dream of. I don't think for a second that these people created this sophisticated of a system at that time. Were very well aware of what weapons were capable of and what they could do. Now, I do think the way that they did wars at that time was very stupid, but that's only because of how we do it today and, the things that we learned in history. But
the only thing they could have done to this amendment was write it so that a fucking 5-year-old could understand it, so that we don't even have to have this argument anymore, right? Because, like I said, they want to argue, well, muskets, they didn't know. Yes, they did. That's the reason why it was written the way it was. It was for a reason. right? The
Mhm.
First Amendment doesn't only apply to the printing press. That's what they were using for freedom of the press. Does it not apply to the internet now? Does it not apply to, email? Does free speech not apply to email because they didn't intend for it? That's a stupid argument. One. Two, if it only applied to a certain time frame, why didn't they put the time frame?
No.
That's why it's open ended. Right?
Well,
Obviously,
my biggest issue, and if you don't mind me just to state this before you continue, my biggest issue is that that right is not supposed to be infringed upon, and yet you have gun control advocates all over the place that are trying to infringe on it every single day. I forget what state it was that is now trying to make any kind of magazine or gun that holds anything more than I can't remember. I think it was like 9 rounds or something like that. I thought it was Virginia. Do you remember what I'm talking about, Craven? There was a state that was getting ready to pass a law where they're stating any magazine.
It was Washington D.C. District of
Was it Washington D.C.? I thought it was a state.
I wonder why they wanted that there.
Yeah. Yeah, because they showed a lot. They showed a gun company that was actually out there handing people magazines to AR. I think to the what are they called? AR. Crap. This just goes to show you I don't own one yet. I'm just gonna say that AR-15s, if I'm correct. They were handing those magazines out because they were like, well, they're gonna try to make this magazine size illegal, so they were just handing them out, and that way multiple hundreds, if not thousands, of people would have them. And I'll be honest with you, the Second Amendment is the one that I get so mad here in America because you have places that are like, these are gun-free zones, and yet they're owned by the government and they have access to the public. And to be honest, to just be clear, that to me is unconstitutional. Anything that is public, that the state owns, that's for the citizens. Unless it's for national security reasons where like they have things that are classified there, I realistically do not believe that they should be infringing on our right to bear arms. I really don't. I think people should be able to have open carry anywhere they want. I think they should be able to conceal carry where they want. I think they should be able to carry rifles where they want. Like and I know this sounds radical, but how can you be a well-armed militia if you can't ever carry your firearms legally, or if you have to go through all these steps, which is why I think these permits, I think that they're completely unconstitutional. I'm going to make you pay to take a class so that you have the right to access your Second Amendment right, which I shouldn't be infringing upon. And not only that, I'm going to force you to take background checks so that way, when you purchase a firearm, these stores can save all of the people they're running background checks so that the day the government decides to go tyrannical, they have a list of people that potentially bought firearms or at least were interested in purchasing firearms. I think that these are the biggest unconstitutional things out there, and honestly, this should be illegal. It should be illegal. The government does not need to have a list of who has firearms and who doesn't, because it is not supposed to be infringed upon. If they stated the government can infringe it all day long, then there's an argument to be made, but it's not to be infringed upon at all. So anyways, sorry, I had to go on that little tangent because I'm very mad when people start infringing on it. Anyways, take it away, Craven. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's kind of the gist of it, right? So, I mean, we could go through every argument if you want. You want to pull up some typical gun control argument, right? So, give me 2 seconds here. Give me 2 seconds. I just want something that. Gives me an actual.
Yeah, it's kind of it kind of brought up Britannica and going over some history. I'm like, I want gun control arguments. I'm not looking for historical events. I mean, look, you
There we
did.
go. So
Oh, okay, nice. You actually pulled some up. Sweet.
yeah, it says okay. Gun supporting our provides for the right for an armed militia, not private citizens. We went over that one.
Mhm.
Criminals use guns because they are so easily obtainable. Fewer guns would make violence harder to commit. It's not necessarily true. Look what happened with the drug war, the whole drug thing. It just exploded, right? Now you can argue, oh, the CIA, funneled shit. Sure, right? But criminals aren't exactly worried about legally obtaining a gun. In fact, the only thing you're doing by making guns less available is taking them out of the hands of the citizens because they're the ones following the law in the first place. You're just making more sheep. This doesn't. The whole notion of we'll just make them less available is like they're going out of their. Most of the criminals who are getting guns, they're already felons. They already have to go through the black market. You're not actually stopping that. Just be
Yeah, that's
realistic.
true.
And then your Obama, you can just send them over the border and your whole, scandal, your Fast and Furious scandal. I'm just kidding. But let's be realistic here. That doesn't actually solve that problem. Countries with strict gun control laws have lower murder rates. That's the guns don't kill people argument, or the guns do kill people argument. It's horseshit.
Yeah, pencils misspell words.
Look at England right now. Look at all the amount of stabbings. Like everybody goes, well, we cite Australia. It's like, did you look at the other crime though? Home invasions went up. Robberies with knives went up. Rapes went up with knives. I mean, everything else just went up. You're not stopping anything. Is that old code? You know what stops a bad man willing to do violence?
A firearm.
A good man better at violence. No, a good man better at violence. So it's Winston Churchill cited that. That's been always cited. Gun control laws will reduce fine. Criminals who illegally obtain firearms will be charged with possession and face stiffer penalties. They won't, though, especially when you have corrupt judges. Like the whole notion, criminals who illegally obtain firearms will be charged with possession and face stiffer penalties. They won't. The penalties are already severe. Just like the penalties for shooting up a school or mass shootings, they're extremely severe. People still do them because there's no one shooting back. That's why all your mass shootings happen in gun-free zones. If you notice that?
It's almost like it's common sense if citizens have more firearms.
What about that one church in Texas that got shot up? Yeah, what happened? 2 guys got in a truck, followed him down, and killed him. It's crazy how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Guns are more likely to harm members of the home than protect them. That's a dumb statistic, and let me explain, because it's the same statistic as they use for pools, right? So the whole statistic that they're trying to say, when a gun's in the house, you're more likely to get shot. Yeah, because sometimes you're cleaning the fucking gun, and you're an idiot, and you point at yourself and you shoot yourself. Or someone grabs it and accidentally discharges the firearm, right? Because before you had the gun, there was no gun to shoot yourself. Just like before you had the pool, you couldn't fucking drown. So when you have more pools in the community, the drownings also go up in pools, because it wasn't fucking there. That's not an actual. The statistic doesn't. Causation and correlation there doesn't actually add up. If you looked at the statistics, you could see that.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
It's not like, oh, everybody who has a gun now automatically shut. You're talking about like a % or 2, maybe. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with the pools. Your chances of drowning go up. Yeah, no shit. There wasn't a pool to drown in. Now there is. Should we outlaw pools? Or should pools only be 2 feet? But you can drown in inches, so you're only allowed to have a 2-inch deep pool because of drownings. Retarded. And actually, if we're sitting here and we're arguing about gun control, why are we always, we're going to ban ARs? It's one of the least. People die more to a carpenter hammer every year than ARs. People die more from falling off ladders than ARs. People die more from baseball bats than ARs. Should we outlaw that? If we're arguing, what about handguns? I was like, eliminate gang violence, and you almost have such a chunk of that whole shooting thing gone to shit. That's just not an argument. Deterrence is hard to measure in a real world and presumes the offenders are forward-thinking enough to be deterred. Deterrence is hard to measure in a real world, and the presence of armed citizen deters potential criminals. That's the deterrence. None of the arguments for gun control make sense. They're not backed up by any statistics, and the moment you start looking into it, it's all horseshit.
You know, you got.
There's only one reason why the government wants you not to have guns, and that's because they're about to do some shit that they don't want you to be able to defend yourself against. Pol Pot, Hitler, Stalin, every ruler that has always seized and done horrible shit has always done gun control first. Eliminate the populace's chances to defend themselves, so then you can control them easier. It's not difficult to understand. If we keep ignoring that, we're going to be the next ones on that list.
Well, you kind of listed all of my heroes there. I'm just kidding. I was just kidding. And you got to stop listing things, you know, that kill people more than AR-15s because the leftists are writing down things to ban and things to make illegal. So you really got to stop that because I like baseball bats. Okay, I'm just saying, some of these people are mentally ill. We need to stop giving them a list of things for them to ban because I feel, I think a lot of times a lot of people just don't have anything going on in their lives and they feel like these things are worth fighting for. But anyways, I was just making a joke, clearly not funny. So LJ, can you hit the crickets? Oh, God, where the hell's LJ? There, I'm about to sound like, where is he when you need him, dang it? Oh, no.
Hey, at least you finally understand the assignment.
Whoa.
You're
For
not
that
funny,
one.
buddy.
For
You're
that
not
one.
funny.
I'm hysterical. Hysterical.
It's actually ugly, y'all.
You know, the world looks at me and they're just like, I can see a man of greatness. And I'm sure you guys can see it too. That's why I go bald. You know, that way my head is always combed first thing in the morning when I wake up and when I go to sleep. So who's really brilliant here, huh?
Right.
That's what I thought.
Right.
I'm just kidding. And thank you for the crickets. I appreciate it.
Right.
But Craven, a lot of these arguments are 100% true. Not as far like what you were stating, not the arguments, for gun control. So a lot of them are 100% true, and it's sad because I'd like to say that common sense is common, but it's not. I hate to say it. It's a very sad reality when some of these just basic understandings are no longer there. More people have guns and more people are allowed to walk around with guns that are law-abiding citizens, then less likely criminals are willing to pull out guns because they don't know who's armed. Or if they see 10 people in a store that are all armed, do you really think an armed gunman is going to pop out and actually try to fight that store? It's just the argument, for people actually carrying guns is what makes a society safer. But, a lot of people are just stupid and they're being taught that guns are the reason why people are dying. That's like saying pencils are misspelling words. It's one of the stupidest arguments I've ever heard. It's just, when you miss the nail and you hit your finger with a hammer, hammers are hitting hands. It's not the people's faults. These tools need to be checked because how dare we misuse them? And it can't be our fault because we can't take accountability for it. So, yeah, it's really ridiculous. But the Second Amendment is by far, the First and Second are by far, in my opinion, probably the top two more crucial ones. Obviously, we have more amendments to go through. Unfortunately, we ran out of time to be able to continue. So, and like I said, this is going to be a multi-part project, everybody. So next time when we continue with Amendment 3, we're going to get more in depth. I'm going to pull up because I believe Amendment 3 is me, Craven is Amendment 4, and then it's back to me for Amendment 5. Sorry we didn't get to more amendments like we were hoping to. We kind of took our time a little bit talking about other things, but things that are important that you should know how it functions or how our country functions. You should know how many senators there are, how many mayors, which mayors are kind of like, there's no set number, how many governors there are, how many House of Representatives there are. These are all things that we should be knowing. These are basic stuff. And you should be knowing at basics what they do and the three branches of government. And then taxation, we kind of had a little bit of fun with that. Craven loves taxes, and he wants his daughter to grow up to love taxes too. And I keep telling him taxes was the best thing on earth that ever happened to us. I like paying taxes on everything, and I'm sure all of you do too. So,
the level of a-holery there.
and hopefully, if we ever run for political office and I'm a politician, I will love it when you pay taxes too, because I can funnel it into my pocket. So please pay all your taxes on time. I'm on my way up, baby. I'm on my way up. But anyways, we ran out of time, but all of these things here, they're crucial. We wanted to go over them. We wanted this series to be informative. I hope we've helped you to understand the basics, at least so far, of at least how our government runs, the structures and the branches of the government. And we look forward to doing a deeper dive next Friday. So stay tuned with us on this multi-part project. I don't know if it's only going to be 2 parts. It might be 3, depending on how in depth we want to go, because there's going to be amendments that I can tell you right now that I know me and Craven are going to say, let's abolish it. Let's get rid of it. And I'm sure there's one in particular that comes to mind, and we will get to that either in the next part or the one after. So anyways, guys, before I get to the closing, Craven, LJ, is there anything, any last words you guys had?
You stink.
You see what I got to deal with, people? Do you see what I have to deal with? Anyways, we're going to go ahead and end it there. LJ, I know you love me, buddy. Love you too. Anyways, guys, please, if you like the content, like, subscribe, and share. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. The Crusade Cast out.